Usually in movies, when you're looking out for Easter eggs, you're looking for nice little winks and nods to other films. Directors love to put in little credits or references to other influential things or people from their lives, and I think that's quite nice. It's a nice thing to look out for. But Easter eggs aren't always done in good faith. They can also be used to poke fun at people that get on the wrong side of the filmmaker. So I'm Amy from What Culture, and here are the 10 most spiteful horror movie Easter eggs. 10. F*** you, Lucky Charms. In Leprechaun. Leprechaun writer-director Mark Jones was inspired to create a horror movie centered around an evil, vengeful leprechaun by watching the iconic commercials for the beloved breakfast cereal Lucky Charms. Hilariously, the film also takes a number of cracks at Lucky Charms' expense, apparently as a result of the cereal's parent company, General Mills, refusing to partner with the movie in a mutually beneficial product placement opportunity. The first jab occurs when the leprechaun hungrily raids some cupboards and comes across a box of Lucky Clovers. But after eating just one mouthful, he spits them out, their taste apparently not quite to his liking. However, the more pointed, vitriolic Easter egg comes right at the film's end, when young Alex uses his slingshot to defeat the leprechaun, but not before legendarily shouting, "F*** you, Lucky Charms." You can't really blame a breakfast cereal conglomerate for not wanting to get involved with a daft, low-budget horror movie, and ultimately, the film is all the better for including these thinly veiled jabs. 9. Taking a bite out of the competition. Jaws 2. Early on in Jaws 2, an orca's brutalized carcass washes up on Amity Island Beach, which Chief Martin Brody believes is the result of a shark attack. Whilst at face value this may seem like a typical plot point for a shark movie, it was actually a sly thumbing of the nose at the film Orca the Killer Whale, a shameless Jaws ripoff that was released just 2 years after the original Jaws. Unsurprisingly, it failed to find the same success. Not content to merely imitate Jaws, though, Orca the Killer Whale also arrogantly lampooned Spielberg's film by featuring a sequence in which an orca slaughtered a great white shark, in effect implying that Orca's titular creature was a major upgrade from Jaws' own great white. And so, as great whites don't generally attack orcas in the wild, it's clear that Jaws 2 was doing this on purpose. They were dumping an orca's chewed-up corpse on the beach as a clapback to Universal, and as moviegoers, we have to applaud them for it. 8. Dead things don't run. Diary of the Dead. Whilst it's absolutely fair to say that George A. Romero's better filmmaking days were long behind him when he made 2007's found-footage zombie movie, Diary of the Dead, the director nevertheless decided to make fun of the tendency for the undead to move fast in modern zombie movies. In one of the film's opening scenes, filmmaker Jason is shooting a horror film and tells his undead cast member that he's moving too fast, exclaiming, "Dead things don't run. If you run that fast, your ankles are going to snap off." Jason insists that the actor shamble instead, and there are numerous other sly references to the running zombies popularized not only by the remakes of Romero's own Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, but also films like 28 Days Later. If there was somehow any doubt about Romero's intent here, he confirmed as much in an interview with Vulture. He said, quote, "I took a big swipe at fast zombies in this film. There's a running gag in the movie that dead things don't move fast. Partially it's a matter of taste. In the original Halloween, Michael Myers never ran. He just sort of calmly walked across the lawn or across the room. To me," he says, "that's scarier. This inexorable thing coming at you and you can't figure out how to stop it. Aside from that, I do have rules in my head of what's logical and what's not, and I don't think zombies can run. Their ankles would snap." End quote. People might find it a little bit pretentious, but I guess logically he is right. 7. No thanks whatsoever. Scream. In a rare case of an Easter egg being concealed in the film's closing credits, Wes Craven's masterful Scream features a very peculiar note near the end of the credits of the usual "the filmmakers wish to thank" dedications. A notice reads, "No thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa City School District Governing Board," and this is due to the board meddling in production and forcing planned location shoots to be changed just shortly before filming. Originally, the production had received verbal permission from Santa Rosa High School's principal to film Scream on its grounds, but once the school district governing board heard about it, they stonewalled filming altogether. With pressure subsequently mounting from locals none too pleased about a slasher film being shot in their backyard, Craven and company had no choice but to up sticks and move shooting to the nearby Sonoma Community Center. But not content to simply just let the matter rest, Craven immortalized the governing board's refusal to play ball by disparaging them in the end credits of this movie. On balance of circumstances, Wes won. 6. Trolling Twilight fans. Fright Night 2011. 2011's surprisingly good remake of the 1985 cult classic vampire film FRIGHT released in the midst of the Twilight phenomenon, and being a self-aware comedy horror as it was, it gleefully took the opportunity to throw some shade at the very uncool vampire franchise. Early on in the film, there's a straight-up joke about Twilight when the protagonist Charlie tells his pal Ed, "You read too much Twilight," a suggestion which greatly offends Ed. But there is a far more subtle allusion to one of the first Twilight movie's more infamous scenes about halfway through Fright Night, when vampire Jerry rolls an apple off his kitchen worktop and catches it whilst Charlie is sneaking around the house. Though Jerry also has a fondness for apples in the original Fright Night, this is actually a specific nod to an oft-ridiculed scene from Twilight. In the scene in question, Bella drops her apple in the school cafeteria, only for her vampiric crush Edward to catch it with his foot and bounce it back up into his hands. All jokes aside, if someone managed to run across the cafeteria in time to catch your apple and bounce it back up, you can't say you wouldn't be impressed. 5. The edited for TV jacket. Return of the Living Dead. Cult classic horror comedy Return of the Living Dead certainly holds nothing back in the gore, nudity, and profanity department, enough that you have to wonder why any TV network would even bother making an edited for content version. Yet it's extremely bizarrely common in the US for R-rated movies to get sanitized TV edits, typically either using alternate takes shot specifically for that purpose, or more hilariously, getting sound-alikes to redub any offending dialogue. In the case of Return of the Living Dead, one of the more prominent edits involves changing the lettering on the back of Freddy's jacket. In the theatrical version of the film, the text reads, "F*** you." But these scenes were reshot for TV with a message that could be enjoyed by all the family. Seemingly not thrilled about the idea of having to shoot a cleaned-up alternate version, though. The filmmakers had a second jacket made with the phrase "television version" written on the back, poking fun at the very idea of such a graphically violent and sexual film being edited for TV. 4. Stephen King's endings always suck. It Chapter 2. There's a running gag in It Chapter 2 that people tell author-protagonist Bill that the ending to his book sucked, which, to anyone familiar with Stephen King's own novels, is sure to feel loaded with meaning. King, despite his enormous success as a writer, has frequently been criticised for the unsatisfying endings to his stories, including the ending to It itself. This recurring joke is a frustrated jab at King's tendency to lose his way in the final stretch. Though, to be completely fair on both the movie and King, the author seems to take it in his stride, as he even shows up for a brief cameo in the movie where he himself mocks Bill for the book's ending. He is a good sport for taking part, but I do wonder if he felt a slight jab in his heart thinking about all the fans that hated the ends of his books. 3. Throwing shade at Jaws. The Giant Spider Invasion. You'd think that any movie called The Giant Spider Invasion wouldn't have the gall, the guts, or the gumption to throw anything at Jaws, never mind obvious shade. But if nothing else, it shows that really, filmmakers have the audacity. Released just 4 months after Jaws, The Giant Spider Invasion was a sci-fi horror movie about, yep, you guessed it, gigantic spiders terrorizing a Wisconsin town. Probably the most exciting thing to ever happen in Wisconsin. Originally, the film spiders were actually going to be more modestly sized at about 10 feet tall each. But when the producers got wind of Steven Spielberg's Jaws going into production, they insisted that the spiders would have to be bigger in order to compete at the box office. A tongue-in-cheek reference to this is made in the movie's own climax, when Sheriff Jones tells another character that the spiders make the shark from Jaws look like a goldfish, to which the other character agrees. Trying to compete with Jaws is one thing, but actively trying to denigrate it in the movie itself? Are you kidding me? Unsurprisingly, it did little harm to Jaws' reputation, and likely only reminded audiences that they could be out there watching a much better film. 2. Wes Craven named Freddy Krueger after his childhood bully. A Nightmare on Elm Street. A Nightmare on Elm Street's iconic antagonist Freddy Krueger is basically drawn from a grab bag of filmmaker Wes Craven's most traumatic formative experiences. In fact, even the antagonist's name was inspired by a real-life terror. As much as the name Freddy Krueger might sound made up and impossible to be a real person's name by now, you have to keep in mind that that's just because of how familiar we are with it in its context. It is actually truly the name of a bully who tormented Craven in his childhood, albeit that kid went by Fred, dropping the Y. Given that Krueger himself is a bully and a tormentor, it's certainly a fitting designation for someone who evidently brought Craven so much misery in his younger years. In fact, this isn't even the only one of Craven's films where this guy is referenced. In The Last House on the Left, released a decade later, the rapist and serial killer played by David A. Hess is named Krug. If nothing else, this just serves to disprove the whole thing of, oh, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Any kind of playground bullying can stick with you for years, for the rest of your life in fact. And clearly this one guy had such an impact on Craven that he chose to immortalize him as the bad guy forever. 1. Retconning Laurie's past. Halloween 2018. 2018's Halloween manages the mostly graceful feat of serving as a direct sequel to the original 1978 movie, all whilst kicking all previous sequels to the curb. Yet its best bit of table clearing is a throwaway line of dialogue that's easily missed if you're not totally paying attention. In one of the film's establishing scenes, Allison is talking to her friends about her grandmother Laurie, and one of them asks her about the killer Michael Myers being Laurie's brother. Allison quickly replies that this isn't true, saying, quote, "That's just a bit that some people made up, to make them feel better, I think," end quote. This single 10-second dialogue exchange does away with one of the most divisive aspects of 1981's Halloween 2, which reveals Michael and Laurie to be siblings, a fact that went on to define the original run of sequels and the bad way they went. In a matter of just seconds, Halloween 2018 wipes that ill-advised plot twist off the map and returns to the much scarier notion of Michael simply being an unstoppable merchant of death motivated only by the need to kill. By getting this retcon out of the way so quickly, director David Gordon Green clearly didn't want fans to think about it too much, or at all. It was certainly a worthwhile retcon, but even in those precious few seconds, you can feel Green's disgust for that fateful plot twist. And with that, we've reached the end of this list of the 10 most spiteful horror movie Easter eggs. I'm sure there's more petty, spiteful people out there who've gone on to make movies, so let us know in the comments below what ones you would have included on this list. And remember to check out whatculture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. As always, I've been Amy from What Culture, and I'll catch you next time.